Ace of Pentacles, of course, has got to do with the roots of the powers of money, but it also has to do with matter. So it will turn up when there's deals on the table to do with money and finances, and it can be huge or it can be small amounts. And it's a very interesting equation to understand that the concept of wealth does depend on the individual. So when you're reading for somebody, it will depend on their idea. One person's idea of wealth would be 3,000 yen. Another person's idea of wealth would be $3 trillion. It depends. Some of it can also be theoretical, but we're talking not necessarily always actual money. This particular card did turn up in the sphere of Hokmar on a Stargate map for a person in Melbourne. The first time I actually saw this oddness, and it ended up, when I saw it, I saw the Bitcoin symbol. And yeah, she is the queen of Bitcoin in Melbourne. Put it with the Two of Pentacles, as we said before, and we're looking at partnerships to do with money and finances, but it's a negotiation that's really necessary. Now, these two are always going to turn up at a time of divorce, whether that's a divorce to do with people who've been involved in an orthodox marriage, whether it's got to do with the dissolution of a business. And of course, if it turns up with the Five of Pentacles, it can quite often be somebody who's going to the wall financially, bankruptcy, particularly if it's got a justice card with it. The justice card in the Five of Pentacles is a legal poverty, and a legal poverty is bankruptcy. If it comes with the Strength card, it's going to have to do with physiology. The woman I mentioned to you a few sessions ago who died of cancer when she was in the process of the end of her life as we know her life to be, she got me to throw three cards out for her, and it came up with the Strength card, and that meant, and the Ace of Wands with the Ace of Pentacles and the Strength card, and her destiny was to be new matter. So we could put the word MATTER with the Strength card and have it be valid. With the Ace of Pentacles and have it be valid. Okay, so it's going to come up in many different scenarios when we get around to looking at your dead reckonings, and if it turns up, it depends on where it falls. If it falls dead center, then the majority of the reading that's unfolding is going to be associated with an aspect of security, depending on what crosses it. If it falls in the sphere of self, it's going to be a person's understanding of their financial situation. If it falls in the sphere of the environment, it's very often got to do with development. It can also have to do with the sale or the purchase of a house. As it comes as an outcome, it would be, and if it falls with an Emperor card, for example, it can also be a person getting a grant, or it can be a payout. Usually a government or an organizational payout, but it doesn't say it's got to do, if it falls with an Emperor, it's not a corporate payout, although most governments are corporate nowadays. Okay, so that's the Ace of Pentacles. We're doing Pentacles tonight, Mira. Fine. Okay, Two of Pentacles. If it falls with a health situation, it's going to be quite likely to be the hips. And the hip problem, of course, is when one leg is longer than the other. When the hips go out, you'll find it can sit on a Stargate map in the sphere of Yesod, because that's got to do with the hips. And it can also be a problem associated with PCOS. Any questions on that? Everybody knows what PCOS is. Polycystic ovary disorder. So that it can end up being associated with the ovaries as well. It can show up with testes. If it comes up with the Devil card and illness, Nine of Swords, it could also be, I say could, because it does depend on the person in front of you, as you know, but it could also be testicular cancer. Because the two of them is really, really important in this instance. If I get it with the Two of Cups, it's a legal intimate partnership. So and if there's a ten of Pentacles or a 10 of Cups, they're sharing a house, which means that the bills are divided. But how are they divided? And of course, in many instances, you're going to be a counselor to your clients. So they got that the idea of division needs to be really sorted out. There is no way that I can do that. But if it does fall in a dead reckoning map sideways, it may be tarot saying we're trying to right the imbalance, because if it's sideways, it's almost level. But that would only apply when we're talking about the dead reckoning. No. Shell, have you got a question?
No.
Okay, all right. The Three of Pentacles is an interview. With all of these, I would really like you to just look at the actual cards. The Three of Pentacles is the little dude standing on the bench, and he's talking to these other people. It could be an almost funny idea of Elon Musk standing on the bench telling the orchestrators or the conductors of world affairs what they should and shouldn't be doing, because he's a bit of an upstart. Similarly, the apprentice in this particular instance is so full of confidence that he's got on the bench, you see, to make himself taller than the other two people present. This will come up when a person's going for an interview, and then you can have a discussion with your client about what their body language represents, how they stand, whether they come through as subservient, whether they come through very confidently. This person is very confident in the discussion. You'll also see that the symbol of the arch is in this particular card. And that lets us know that the process of what we're doing also is associated with the Masonic orders. And the Masonic orders very much have got to do with architecture. And if you look at all the major architectural buildings of the world, they do have arches. And the arch, of course, is the strongest form of architecture, which you probably know. Hence the capstone as being a very strong symbol of within Masonic orders, etc., as the capstone is considered almost the ipsissimus, or the person that holds the whole thing together. Like the capstone of the Catholic Church at the moment is dying in a hospital in Rome, isn't it? So the Three of Pentacles is going to turn up when negotiations are underway. If you had all three of these, in any order, really, there would be, you can see that yourself now. There are discussions taking place. There is a matter of money, isn't there? And it's a matter of the partnership or the balance of the money. And there's discussions or negotiations taking place in regard. So those three make sense like a sentence. And it's really important to look at your cards like you're reading a sentence. And they don't have to go from left to right, but I read from left to right. And therefore, as a person with only one main language, I read tarot the way I read a book, from left to right, which is even when sometimes you put up your three cards, I get you to put them up and you'll put them from right to left and I get the shits. That's only because I can't read them. You're putting your words backwards. It's really that simple.
What's the cup that the person on the stool is holding, and it looks like a piece of fabric that the other two people are holding in the Three of Pentacles? What are they holding, both of them?
I'd be guessing.
Okay.
I actually don't take them always all the little bits into account. It's very, very productive to do so, to scrutinize and to see, for example, the rose cross that's sitting there, that's in the little triangle of the building. There's lots of little bits and pieces that may draw your attention when you're reading to people. So I can only give you the main understanding. It's difficult, Mira, because I don't like to speculate. I'd be making shit up if I was to actually answer your questions. But second question, that was a good one. Second
question, you said earlier something about the bones and cups being the squishy parts and the swords being the spine, or was it the Ace of Swords was the spine? I just wanted to clarify that.
Ace of Swords can be the spine, very definitely. The Ace of Swords can also be epigenetic phenomenon that a person experiences, because it will show up when a person is experiencing IVF, when there's a pipette involved in a medical procedure, as a tattoo needle. It will, but that's particularly epigenetic in connection with the physical body. It doesn't necessarily show up as any part of the body. It never has, in my experience, shown up as a part of the body other than the spine, because of that sense of straightness. And cups can be the squishy bits, yes, definitely, like lungs and all, but also I haven't got any other swords for lungs, But a lot of body parts, it's the softness of the cups that comes through is significant. Yeah. And the bones come through as pentacles in every single instance, except in situations here with the two of pentacles when it will show up as being testes. But it again depends on the card to come around. Thank you for that.
Does that mean that all pentacles can represent bones at different points, or it's more the Ace of Pentacles, or it depends on where it is?
Four of Pentacles. The Four of Pentacles, now, it's a very interesting and very underwhelming card. With the Emperor card, it will turn up with somebody who's doing their bachelor's. It's an average 4 years. So it can be time sequencing as well. So you can get a 4 days, 4 weeks, 4 months, or 4 years situation going down here. It can also be a miserly thing, someone who's just hanging on to whatever they've got. But the other thing is fairly recently, it showed up as somebody who's encapsulated, somebody who's not trapped, quite contented to stay put. This particular person, they don't do this big gesture thing. This is a very closed-in phenomenon. It doesn't always have to do with money. In fact, it very rarely does in my instance. I have come across it as a deposit, or someone who's saving for a deposit, either for a house or a change of residence, will also come through, weirdly enough, as things like bed bugs, very small critters. But you would again be having a strength card come with it. Very rarely, but there's no point me not mentioning the rarities, is there?
The sun, could it be for small children?
Got to be 4 children? If it falls in context, yes.
Yeah.
It would have to fall in context with the sun card, for example. Could be 4 people. Yes, the number 4 is very solid. At one stage, it was talking about, Tarot was talking to somebody about physical surgery, and this was where they were neatly and tidily put back in their body. So the person had to have open heart surgery. So the Ace of Swords came through and they were cut from groin to throat. But the Four of Pentacles put them back together again neatly. The Five of Pentacles. Well, we need to look at the snow. We need to look at the people that are outside the window. The window is not an ordinary glass window. It's a stained glass window. There's an indication with that the people are passing by a church or a building that has got enough money to support stained glass. But the factor is in difference to the Three of Pentacles, with the 3 people that are looking quite well dressed and quite healthy within themselves. The 2 people in the Five of Pentacles are obviously impoverished. So the key meaning of this card is poverty. And with each card, it's depending on what it falls with. But splaying this out, it will mean that something is also missing. If it does fall in a health spread, interestingly enough, it can be a lack of bone density, a magnesium, or an iron deficiency. It doesn't show up as many other disorders that come to mind initially, but it's very definitely going to turn up if a person is going to be very, very financially oopsie. It can be a short period of time, particularly, for example, if you look at this one, you'll see how negotiations go awfully wrong. We can put it in the middle. It even makes more sense. So you can see that there's discussion taking place regarding partnerships there regarding money. The Five of Pentacles is a situation where that money turns to nothing. It can be somebody who just doesn't spend. It's almost the exact opposite to hoarding, not lack so much as sparsity. If it falls in the Yesud, if your client is a woman who wants to have children, she's not producing enough eggs. But its essence is poverty or a lack.
Like a lack of self-esteem, I think I've heard you say before too, in Tiferet.
It's just lack or impoverishment. And that can be an impoverishment of mind. It can be entire countries. It can be productive insofar as it could be what in Australia we call a HEX debt. So a person's got this sense of debt hanging over their head, but it's not necessarily impoverishment, but an aspect of their future financial wealth would be defined by the loan that was given as a hex debt. Very definitely, yes. Six of Pentacles. Even though it's very simple, the Six of Pentacles very often makes people feel better, because even as an outcome, in the midst of chaos and discord and flood and violence and violations and goodness knows what else, what this card says is you're going to be able to pay your bills. And so many people will sigh with relief, because that's a fairly big statement, particularly if they were thinking that this was going to be their outcome. So it may be their outcome, but if this one comes with it, there's not much coming in, but they're paying for what they need to pay for. It can also turn up with emotional implications. The idea, for example, of payback, retribution. This one will come up with that. You need to work out by the cards around it whether your client is this person on their knees begging for a handout, or whether their person is this one standing who's doing the handing out. Will very often turn up with real estate. It's a silly little example, but I might use it. I was selling a trailer and I had a few bites, but the two people that came around, the first one came around and I dropped it from $1,800 to $1,000 and was registered and blah, blah, blah. And I used it, I bought it to drive down to Tasmania and I can't get it on the ship back. So I just thought I'll just get rid of it. First person who came, his name was Trent. And Trent had a certain swagger about him. His belly was quite large. He was very well dressed. Did I make immediate calculations based on his appearance? Yes. My immediate calculation based on his appearance was that he was a dealer and that he was going to do as much as he possibly could to knock me down. So he attempted to find things that were problematic about the trailer, and there isn't anything problematic about the trailer. So he said, "Oh, how far down will you go?" I said, "I won't." He said, "Oh, I'll offer you $750." And I said, "And there's the gate. You can go." He was horrified that it was that straightforward. And he huffed and out he went. He said, "Oh." And the second person who contacted me online, name was Roger. Roger said, "Collarbone's broken. I'm up shit creek at the moment. Need a trailer like you wouldn't believe. Got 800 cash. How'll that do?" And I said, "That'll do. Turn up, pick it up, take it away." I was not going to be treated as this person by that person. I was more interested in balancing out the Two of Pentacles and then having the Ace of Pentacles as my outcome, and to feel good about myself and to feel good about the person who is also buying the trailers. You will get it with the Five of Pentacles for people that are obsessive, but then again, you're going to get a Devil card or the equivalent thereof for someone who's a compulsive spender. And you'll also get it for somebody with a Seven of Swords in there. They're a kleptomaniac. You get it a lot with teenagers. If you're seeing things that go missing from a person's home and there's 2 or 3 adolescents in or around the home, it's quite often got to do with the Seven of Swords, with somebody who's sneaking around taking the money. The Seven of Pentacles, which is our next card out, the one thing that's really important that we discussed this week also is this gardener is standing back and looking at the harvest. Those pentacles on the tree are fruit. That's really significant. So the harvest, the whole growth process, the planting and tending is done. And the person is looking pretty pleased with themselves. They're also an observer. So there are many things maybe going through consciousness of the client when they're watching, because he or they are just watching the result. Because when this comes up with the Devil card, it can be a Cancer. When it comes up with illness, it's not necessarily a Cancer. It can very easily be a growth. It can also be what you're growing in your garden or what you're growing in your hothouse. And it's very interesting how tarot will change over the years, because the Seven of Pentacles did used to turn up with the Devil card for a dope crop many, many years ago. I'm talking maybe 20, 30 years ago. But as cannabis has become legalized and more understood as a medicine, it stopped presenting it as a dope crop. It removed the devil card from this Seven of Pentacles. Isn't that interesting? I find it more fascinating how tarot will change with stories as the world changes. Let's have a really good example here. So there's the Seven of Pentacles. The Seven of Pentacles is followed by the Ace of Pentacles, and then it's followed by the Four of Pentacles. So the person concerned who's looking at their crop knows how much it's worth and is not going to justify or jeopardize their knowledge. But they're going to hang on to what they've got with that Four of Pentacles, you see. There also will come into effect the person concerned who's a negotiator. So there they are. It's looking backwards where I am with you guys. Let's put them like this. So they know the worth of their crop. Their crop can be the number of years they've studied. It can also be the experience that they've got in that particular field. It can be just vegetables and fruit. It will show up with gardening, of course. That'll be the Empress card with the gardening. It can also be a forested area, an area that's tended as well. The value of that crop is being discussed. Now, if we were to move the Ace of Pentacles to the other side, can you see that I just changed the entirety of the story? So first of all, the person concerned has got the harvest. That can be their 7 years study or training, for example. Then they've gone for their interview. And the Ace of Pentacles is where the negotiations have landed. That's what the crop is worth. It would be a similar situation to rare earth. If you had a major growth happening on a part of your body, you'd first of all go and get it discussed and go and get it sorted out, find out with an MRI if it's a cancer, if it's a major swelling, what the swelling is all about. And that instance there is where the Ace of Pentacles is the knowledge. Do you get me? So the knowledge is gained. If that wasn't there and there was just a strength card there that's explaining more about the physicality, the Ace of Pentacles is like the root to that power of security and wealth. With men, the root of the powers of security and wealth can also be knowledge. So it's not necessarily assuring them of a large sum of money. It's assuring them of respect. So you really need to read them with other cards for them to make sense.
With the devil card law, is it can be so warts and cysts and things like that, or is it another card?
No, the devil would definitely be another card beside the devil card. The devil card is just too intense. And I'm very aware of you with this week when you did the Dead Reckoning, which the rest of you haven't seen. I don't know whether you've got an image, whether you took a screenshot of that you can show people, because there was a Queen of Cups and she was crossed by the devil card. And you saw her as a hoarder.
Oh, the one I sent you, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I was very aware that I didn't know where you got the idea that she was a hoarder. Because the devil card, the essence of the devil card, when I would like to explain this to you, the essence, the absolute essence or core of the devil card is fear. The devil was invented by the church in, I'm pretty sure, the 1500s. Before that, biblically, the devil was considered as the adversary. The devil was considered in Latin as Lucifer, which just means light bringer. They had to invent something that was as gross as they could possibly get. And what the idea of the devil card was is it triggered the Malleus Maleficarum. Nobody knows what that is?
I do, I think.
It's called the Hammer of the Witches. We'll have a brief aside from the Seven of Pentacles, but it's important. The more knowledge you've got to do with just your lifescape, the easier it becomes to do this work. The Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of the Witches, was started up by Sprenger and somebody else in Germany. And it's a very interesting phenomenon. It's a little bit like what happened between Afghanistan and Iraq, insofar as over the weekend, everything went from Osama bin Laden to Saddam Hussein, and nobody really questioned that there was something wrong with that. And it was in the media, and it's like we were, first of all, we were flooded with the information regarding Osama bin Laden. And then no one said What's the story there? Why are we all of a sudden going from Afghanistan to Iraq? No, not one media outlet let on at the fact that the situation had just changed dramatically. The same thing happened with the devil card insofar as around the 11th, 12th century, what was occurring as a result of the Knights Templar was the evil was if you were a heretic. So the word heretic has gone into the dictionary in closer to now time-wise as somebody who is a problem. But the original word in Greek means the right to choose. So it went from heretics to an inquisition, just like Osama bin Laden to Saddam Hussein. It was very quick and it was very, what the fuck just happened? And you'd need to have your sort of wits about you when you're studying, because you're going, hang on, isn't being a heretic still the same? No, it's not. It's just basically, if you're not with us, you're against us. And you have no right to choose. That's how intensely evil the Christian church is. The idea of witchcraft didn't even become even thought of until after the Malleus Maleficarum. Now, the Malleus Maleficarum is a book, I do recommend it, I do. It's a book that is so violent, its capacity to teach torture makes waterboarding look like something that you do on a weekend over a barbecue. And I've been to the Witches Museum in Cornwall as well. And one of the objects that they had in the museum was an iron headpiece, like a bird cage. But when the door closed, the spike would go through the woman's mouth and out through the back of her neck. This was just one of the torture techniques that was available and that was used over centuries. And to be able to back that up, there had to be some evil that was so evil. It wasn't Satan, because anybody with a bit of savvy could understand that Satan came from the Middle Eastern word shaitan, and that the word shaitan is son. They couldn't use the word Lucifer because the word Lucifer was light bringer. It's a Latin word, and one of the names of their Mary person was Mari Lucifer. So they had to invent an object so that, what is the word? It doesn't come to me off the top of my head, but there was this not a chameleon. It was the creation of these, and it became very popular in the 1800s, the creation through taxidermy of these mixes of animals together. So the church mixed all the chimera, thank you very much. The church mixed all these animals up together and put a tail on the back of this beastie. But the other thing that it did when it created the devil, which is one of the only religious cards in the pack, by the way, you see it there. It's got bat wings. It's got ram's horns. It's got a beard. I think this is very important. It's got a beard. In a lot of the different variations of the devil, or this particular card, it was because it was called Baphomet, B-A-P-H-O-M-E-T, which very, very recently has been recognized as a mistranslation of the word Muhammad. So all these hundreds of years, people have presumed that this was an entity, that this is real. The devil made me do it. In many instances, there's one breast, one male breast, one female breast, one chest, one breast. The idea of the goat's feet became popular, and that came from the understanding of the bull and the male goat and the male deer and the ram and all these different male entities and it was decidedly male, which is quite fascinating. But the whole thing was an invention. And the invention, just like Jesus, is an invention. So these inventions are where your study comes in really importantly, because we're living in a world compromised by religion, and particularly Abrahamic religion, whereby it infantilizes us. And it quite terrifies me. There was images this evening of all these people who are praying for the Pope not to die, despite the fact that there is thousands and thousands of children in Gaza who've just died, and the fact that this particular man has got all this money living in a in a castle or a palace based on a dupe. So the devil was invented to be able to trap people. And there's such a history behind it that the essence of it, when it comes through to tarot, is absolutely fear. And if anybody here had a lump, like I've got two little lumps on my forehead, you can see there's two little round things. So I've had a couple of little basal cell carcinomas just cut out, and there's a little stitch in each one. But if you found yourself with a lump, and because you're all women here tonight, if you had a lump in your breast, you're going to be shitting yourself, yes? That's the devil card. This not knowing. And what is it that invokes fear is not knowing. The people who are stuck or radicalized into the idea of a superstition. And that's so with religion. Radicalized into a superstition of there being some supreme being. And of course, we all know some of the stalwarts of religious denialism who say, well, what a trick this supreme being is. But when it turns up just as it is, and perhaps with a strength card, perhaps with a 9 of swords or whatever, particularly with a 10 of swords, it can be a painful lump, but it's definitely not cancerous. So yes, it can come through as warts, but the devil card wouldn't be with it, because a wart is not going to induce fear. The moment you know it's a wart and not a cancer, you will relax. You'll go, that's a shit of a thing to have right on my genitals, but I'm glad it's not a cancer, okay? Because the chances of you living a full life despite it or dancing around it are necessary and obvious. Yes, we call on that now. So it is growth, but it's the fulfillment of growth also. So it seems to have got as far as it possibly can once it's fruited.
Oh, I've managed to send that to the screen. Can we do that later and go through that map?
Absolutely. We'll just get through the pentacles and then we'll definitely have a look at that, because I think that was very, very important, that map. Yeah.
The reason why I said it was the hoarder was because it was the 4 of Pentacles were there with it.
Yeah, but that the 4 of Pentacles can also be someone who's stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they can do it, but it's just a bit difficult when there's guesswork.
Yeah.
You could be absolutely correct but I don't know who that person is. We have to unfortunately do theory here. It's very different when you're sitting with a client, as probably those of you who are readers already know. It's completely different. You just know you're on your own. But with this, we've got to cover all the possible options. That 4 of Pentacles with the devil card woman means she could be an alcoholic and she can't stop. Of course, you could be correct. Person could be a hoarder. And there was also a 5 of Wands in there, if I remember rightly.
Well, yeah, there was. And there was a 10 of Cups too.
Right, so the 10 of Cups is home or family.
Oh, no, so not 10 of Cups. 9 of Cups.
9 of Cups, okay, so that was that wish card. 8 of Pentacles means work. So, of course, that word can mean many things. A person who's getting a facelift is getting work done. You've got a lot of paperwork to do to organize your refugee status to get passed and your visas, your permanent visas to come about. You've got to do your work. It can represent a job, a career, employment. Yeah, it can also represent a work that you're doing, or the work that you're doing for an exhibition. So it's really, in a strange kind of way, it's a practical doing card. Somebody might say to you as a question, I've already embarked on a new project and I want to know whether I'm wasting my time or not. If this is the first card on the table, that's the work, it's going to work. It's not a yes or a no. You see, the yes can be an Ace of Wands. The no can be a Death card. But with the 8 of Pentacles, I mean, yes, she or he got to work at it, but it's still going to work. So I know immediately that turns up that I've got a yes. And of course, there's the negotiation. And that also is part-time work. You see. Okay. with the Ace of Pentacles, they were, and if you were to put the Ace of Pentacles and the Eight of Pentacles together with the 10 of Pentacles, they work in a bank or insurance company or somewhere that uses usury, which, by the way, in case you didn't know, it is illegal under Islam. Everybody know what usury is? Anybody doesn't know?
I don't.
Usury is when you get paid for nothing. Insurance is usury. People, banks that gain interest, that take their $3 a month out of your account, that's usury. Interest in its own way is usury. Anybody who is a middle person, middle management, in many instances, that's usury. But insurance is a perfect example of usury. It's a form of gambling. Any occupation that relies on the fear or the hope, like let's take lotto. That's usury. Maximum usury. You got to go behind the scenes with things like lotto and Powerball. And I know people, does a pyramid scheme count? Yes, very definitely. Things like pyramid schemes, Powerball. I watched a show this week about that woman who pretended to have brain cancer and became a celebrity and had a book published. I felt really sick from watching it. Graft is usury. Anybody who overcharges for their skill rather than fixed, that's usury. Most government officials are practicing usury because most government officials don't do anything. And if you've got 10 people standing around looking at a hole in the ground for a week and they're told to slow down even further, that's usury, because of course that's your money that's being used to fill in that hole in the road that never gets really filled in. So it's usury. It appears to be a tradesperson, and they've got all their little hammered bits up on the wall for people to look at. So it's quite obvious what it is, but it falls as a word in a sentence rather than being an outcome, unless it says that worked. Nine of Pentacles. The Nine of Pentacles is a card of quality over quantity. You may have no other furniture in your house except a Persian rug and 2 cushions on the floor. That's the Nine of Pentacles, because the Persian rug's made of silk. Do you get it? It's the quality of whatever it happens to be. Say you went to Ojibwe country and you apprenticed under a medicine person on the making of dream catchers. And they taught you the philosophy behind it, the understanding of what it was about, what products to use, what patterns to use. They were teaching you some really powerful ancestral knowledge. That's the Nine of Pentacles, in difference to whether if you go down Swanston Street and you buy a key ring made in China or Dreamcatcher. The essence of it is a principle, and it's like before when we discussed things to do with the misappropriation of other cultures. It can represent a person. Representing a person means they don't talk a lot. But when they do talk, it's something to be said. They don't rabbit on. If you were to have a delicacy, so you were to go to Mongolia and you were to get best lamb's testicles, this would be the card that shows up, for example. As a guest in certain cultures, the Nine of Pentacles is typical. You get the best of anything. So it's the best of something without it being a lot of it. Okay. It's quality over quantity. And there is their first expression that I ever learned about this card way back was that it was called Mistress of All She Beholds. And there's nothing else that person has with them except the greave on their arm and the hawk or the falcon that's a hunting bird. And their sense of aristocracy comes through there, but the aristocracy can be the Fisher King, the person living under the bridge in a tent, who's got all this skill and it puts it into effect in that area of the best of the best. So if they're a dumpster diver, they're the best. Ten of Pentacles is one of those cards that has many meanings, depending on what it falls with. So it's essentially, I'll just give you the essences. Essentially, it's a rented or released dwelling. Similarly, if it falls in the sphere of Binah, which is associated with Saturn on the tree of life, which is called the Stargate map, that's going to be a mortgage. which of course is a death deed. We all know that. It also represents the banks or building societies and financial institutions. So depending on where it falls and what it falls with, it can also just be the house of money. And funnily enough, it shows up in different parts of medieval anywhere. So if we're talking place, I'm going to go to medieval places that I know of: medieval Spain, medieval France, different medieval places in the world. If anywhere, it's got that sensation of really elder architecture, a really long-standing cultural significance. So it's also a beautiful card when it turns up with place. Okay. It will also show up with work. Oh, so can this, and so can this. These together, for example, can turn up for somebody who's amatura. Now, there's a difference between, in the actual interpretation of the word amatura to the word amateur. They've been interpreted differently, despite the fact that they actually are the same word. Amatura means for the love of it. And yet the word amateur, how it's interpreted, is somebody who's not good enough, not as good as a professional. And I like the word amatura because many of you here, many of us are amatura healers. We're not amateurs, not at all. But we don't have a doctor's license behind us. And many doctors are amateurs when it comes to health. Can you hear the difference?
Yeah.
This is a situation where the person concerned is working out of a warehouse that might be in the middle of a bombed zone, no money associated with it, but they're working on that building to make it as beautiful as possible. One could, for example, look at areas of Gaza where people are just starting to put their tents up in the houses that they used to have, and you'd have a layout kind of like this, where they're working on the place to get as much quality as they can with as little as they can. And of course, I'm reading, unfortunately, I'm laying these out in front of you backwards. So it would go more like this. Is that better? Is that preferable? You're working on the place that it's a quality, it's a labor of love because there's no money involved. So it could be a beautiful tent. Yeah. And they could be mending their nets. The same thing turned, although it's got a dwelling place associated with it. So it tends to be a dwelling. This will turn up when somebody's twixt and twin selling a place, when they're going into Airbnb, when they're going to have an extra dwelling, when they would have an ace of swords there to do with an eight of wands so that they've got a land or property. Is Alice, you going to sleep there, darling? Am I boring you? No?
I'm sleepy for some reason. Sorry.
That's all right. It happens. So the 10 of Pentacles is going to turn up again when a renter or person may be staying in temporary accommodation. It can also be a person who's renting a room, but you'll tell it by the other cards that are around it. Okay, Knight of Pentacles. The other day I had a client and there was a whole deal going down. I said, I said, you've got a 16-year-old. And they said, how the fuck do you know that? Because underneath the foundation was a Knight of Swords. And there was a whole trip where they're going Knight of Swords and the outcome was the Knight of Pentacles. I said, because they're going to, and there was a justice card in there. I said, because they're going to go for their license. They're currently riding a push bike and they're going to go for their license for a bigger vehicle. And she said, yes, that's happening this week. So you'll tend to get your feedback fairly quickly as well. So this is your larger vehicle. This can also show up as a truck or a bus or a caravan or a four-wheel drive. It can be an ordinary car, although the ordinary car is usually going to be your Knight of Wands. But there's not that many people nowadays who actually buy ordinary cars. They like to get them big, as if in some way that's going to give them a sense of power, despite what I know about road rescue. So the Knight of Pentacles also, as a foundation to any question about money, finances, practicalities at all, this is your TCB card, which means take care of business. This is more of a plod than a sprint. The Knights are always movement, and they can represent constructs or concepts of time. But they don't give you a time sequence. The Knight of Pentacles is slower. It would be a draft horse, in difference to your Arab. Your Arab is the knight of swords. Your beautiful horse that you take on an equestrian that might be 15, 16 hands, that's going to be your knight of wands. Your knight of cups is not a horse. It's just a matter of trust the process. Okay. Page of Pentacles can be a child that's an earth sign child, Taurus, Capricorn, or Virgo. If the Page of Pentacles turns up with or in collaboration with the Hermit card, it's the time of Virgo. If the Page of Pentacles turns up with usually the Emperor, sometimes the Hierophant, it's the time of Taurus. With Capricorn, it's the Devil card. Now, you need to watch out for your wording when you're speaking with a client, because it's going to come one of two ways. It says this is either an earth sign child, Taurus, Capricorn, or Virgo, or the child of an earth sign. Now, can you hear the difference in the language?
Yeah.
It could still be an earth sign child, but the child of an earth sign makes a very difference, because there's the earth sign person that they're the child of. Very interesting when they'll turn up in the same map that you've got a person of pentacles with you. It's going to be what I call a mini-me. Tarot loves that expression. If one of person's offsprings are so like the adult that they argue all the time, because they're actually alike, and when offspring argue with their parent, it's usually because they're, despite what seems on the surface, they're very often similar in their attitudes. You find it time and time again. It's a good psychology to know. So that's the Page of Pentacles. It can also turn up to do with a new business or a small business, but it isn't big business. It's not a hobby. There's no amateur in there. Do you get me? So it's definitely a financial venture. Bear in mind that because it's small, it can also be a dog or a cat. You've got to work out, because tarot doesn't necessarily species differentiate, but you'll get it. It'll come in a flash. Like sitting with a client this week saying, oh, you have horses. She said, yeah, there's my problem, because they're selling their property, one property to another. So they've got to make sure that they've got adjustment organized for the process of the 30, 60, 90 days in between, which you will get also. So it's worth knowing, depending on where you are. The King of Pentacles is an earth sign man, Taurus, Capricorn, or Virgo. Can be, and I use this expression a lot, Mr. Bob the Builder, because they've got a practical side of their nature, something very practical and pragmatic about the King of Pentacles. And that can come through as a person who does identify as male but was born female. But you've also got to be really careful there, because very often tarot won't play the game. It certainly won't play the game of saying this person has had a gender reassignment and therefore they're now female when they weren't born that way. Tarot won't go there, because they know it's lying. And it's fine to agree with a person and honor and respect that person's decisions, but there's no way a person born as a female can become a male. They can identify as such, and they can have all the surgery they like, however. And similarly with the Queen of Pentacles. Before we get on to your threes, Fiona, let's have a look at, if you screenshotted, let's have a look at that.
Just let me see how I can share this with you.
The one thing that Fiona didn't see, which I came back to her later, was the three down the bottom.
I knew that the Page of Wands in the Tower was fire, right?
Yes, but because there's an Eight of Cups before it, it doesn't come through as being a problematic fire. So things come to mind like a hearth fire, or being able to sit around a fire with your friends out in the garden. It doesn't come through as a bushfire. It doesn't come through as an uncontrolled fire, because there's a sadness and a sense of nostalgia associated with it. So whatever the person's walked away from, they're walking away from a hearth fire. They're walking away from that fire. Okay, interesting. But the whole picture there, which is really difficult, what came to mind eventually, and I'd be very interested in anybody else's opinion, it came to mind eventually that the woman concerned has dementia, and that she was going into a care facility, hence the Temperance card. I was quite saddened by it, that sense of limitation with the Four of Pentacles. When dementia first starts to come into a person's life is that they're just a little bit forgetful. The happiness card is behind her. The Nine of Cups is behind her. You see, the positioning is very important. The center, when you put the center out, the center is the first card down is the Queen of Cups. That's crossed by the Devil card. And it's very interesting, the positioning. If the Devil card was elsewhere, I'd be inclined to consider that person either under threat, to have a habit, but because it's crossing them, it's almost like they're completely misunderstood, or they're unable to communicate, particularly with that Five of Wands, and particularly also with the Four of Pentacles. And they can be betwixt and between one place and another, which again is the Temperance card. So the Temperance card is, remember we've discussed it as being like an extension bridge between one cliff top and another cliff top, like a tightrope walker. There is very definitely something, for lack of a better, or just generic, I'll use the generic word wrong, in or around or in connection with that water sign woman. We don't know if the Devil card has got to do with her having an addiction. See, this is where I disagreed with you before, because there was nothing else to show up as her undoing. The Five of Wands in the sphere of self was confusion. If it was in the sphere of the environment, it'd be a messy place, but it's not, it's in her. It's crossed wires. Either that or she's schizophrenic, or multiple personality disorder can also show up in here, because again, the Temperance card is some form of hospice or hospital or health facility. And then she may go from there into the Ten of Pentacles. And similarly, it could also be a person who comes to mind that we both know.
I'm thinking the same.
Yeah, that both know, who has anorexia, who can end up in hospital, because the Four of Pentacles is a smallness, isn't it? And there's a hint with their Six of Cups, which has got to do with the past in her head. And a lot of the things to do with anorexia are, psychologists like to blame the person's past or their parents for the disorder, which of course we've actually discussed. I'm working with a few anorexics about their microbiome at the moment. So there is a possibility that, and this is just a theory, that people who experience anorexia, and it can come on for no reason, and then it becomes a fad. Like a lot of things are being considered a fad at the moment. It's like a very strange period of time that we're in. But I looked at this, and the thing that more than anything, Page of Wands became the Five of Wands. So there's something in it that just got out of control. Now, the Devil card with the Four of Pentacles comes through almost as a trap. So they've gone from the Nine of Cups, but now they've got the card of secrecy with the High Priestess card. They've got that card of secrecy, or things that are hidden, or no really solid. We could look at it as a medical disorder and go, where's the diagnosis? There isn't one.
How would you view then the Pentacles and the dwelling? Like she moves
at a halfway, can be a halfway house.
Yeah, she moves into somewhere else, maybe.
Yeah, so this could go from the hospital situation, or if it was a prison, it'd be the Temperance card would be a justice card, into being in a share situation or a halfway house, which would then be the Ten of Pentacles in this instance. She's not moving home. She's not going home. Either that or they're putting up in a flat or an apartment. But see...
Can I ask something? Sorry.
Please?
I'm just wondering about that triplet down the bottom, and I don't know why this is just stuck in my brain, but I'm fixated on it. If this woman has dementia, could she have walked away from something on the stove? She's walked away from
No, there's nothing
the
there
stove and it's caught fire?
nothing to indicate a problem fire.
Okay.
The Page of Wands with the Tower is simply the word fire.
Okay.
The context of that fire is dependent on what's around it. Good idea, but it doesn't fit in this instance because there's nothing else. There's no other instance of death or havoc or massive. There's no house burning down. I've seen them in Byron. People used to come to me and have similar things to this, but sort of different, because you would, for example, have the Ace of Pentacles at the outcome when they burnt their own cafe down for as an insurance job. then that fire would be relevant. And then also the devil card would be relevant as well. But the Ace of Pentacles would be the outcome, not the Ten of Pentacles. The Ace of Pentacles is in the sphere of hopes and fears. Like if I was wealthy enough, if there was enough money, or if I was secure or solid enough within myself. I mean, it's difficult not to be biased because I know perfectly well I have an associate or a known person that Fiona is dealing with as well who is anorexic.
And she's a Queen of Cups.
And that fits this completely. And the messiness of consciousness of self, or etc. Okay, and the holding on. But you see, the Four of Pentacles is little.